Hi there. Okay, so we have our third essay. I have my pencil, I have my essay, and I have my 6 marker pens right here. Hopefully you do too. Before we start, I want to remind you about Graphic Organizer. If you haven't finished it yet, show it to me today, and you can put a gold star in the hallway. Same thing with your outline. Remember, the outline, everything has to be a complete sentence. I want to remind you about keeping your thesis statement, what your essay is about, to a pattern 2 sentence. Make sure you don't have to be verbs in it. Make sure it starts with a preposition and a noun, comma, and then it's probably a good idea to start with your hero's name and then finish it up. The other thing is, I noticed yesterday when you were typing that some of you are not indenting your paragraphs. So you know what paragraph 1 looks like. So you go to your outline and it says it right there, paragraph 1. And then when you get to paragraph 2, you indent. And to indent, you hit tab once. So just make sure you're doing that. Make sure you have a 12-point font and it's not too fancy, not too like cursive-y. Otherwise, I can't read it and it's hard. I like to read stuff fast. Because when I read stuff fast, I get it back to you fast. Okay, so anyway, here we are. Here's my grandma. This essay is very near and dear to my heart because I loved and still love my grandma, and she's passed. So I get a little teary. So if you tease me or make fun of me, I will get teary. I will get teary and I'll be hurt because I'm sharing something about me that I don't share with just anybody. So you're lucky. You're welcome. So first thing, let's put our name on a paper. This you're going to turn in when we're done. So make sure you have your name on your paper. And I'm going to go at a pretty good speed, explaining things as I go. And if I go too fast, just make sure that you pause. Make sure my mouth is not open. Attention grabber. I ask a question. So here we go. Can you see this at all? So here we go. Have you ever loved someone so much that you couldn't imagine life without them? So that's how I get the reader's attention. So that's orange. Now I go on and I say, ever since I can remember, I always had a close relationship with my grandmother. I remember when my granddad retired from the United States Army after 36 years of service, and they chose to live near us. I was 4 years old. My family took many, many trips to visit them in Tacoma, and I remember getting so excited when they came to visit us in Moses Lake. I love them both so much, but my relationship with my grandma was unique. So all of that is background information. So I'm going to go ahead and put a box around all that part. Oops, I went a little long. So it looks like this. If you need to pause, go for it. So this is my setup. The stage. So I'm taking you on a journey to my 3 reasons. Because I could just say, have you ever loved someone so much you couldn't imagine life without them? She made me feel important. I probably would still get a good score. It's just for me, I feel like that's a little choppy. So I want to have, I want to craft it a bit with some wordsmithing. So now we go to my 3 reasons. Those are yellow. So she made me feel important. That's what paragraph 2 is going to be all about. And then we have, when I spoke, my grandma listened to me. That's going to be my 3rd reason, detail, or fact. And the last one will be, she made sure I knew all of our family's history. So those are my 3 RDFs. I'm going to have them in my essay, but I'm going to change the way I say it. And then I go to my thesis statement, blue. I'm still using a pattern 3 because, like I said yesterday, it's my favorite. And you're going to start working with it on Monday, so might as well expose you to it. So my thesis statement, what the whole thing is about. Although many people have influenced my life, my grandma Whit has had the greatest impact. So this is my thesis statement. This is what it's all about. So let's transition. Purple, for starters. I said in the first paragraph that my grandma made me feel important, right up there. So here I changed it a little bit and I say, I know I was a priority to my grandmother. And not only did she tell me, but she showed me how important I was by her actions. So that's what the whole paragraph is about. It's the main idea. So it's green. So there I go, there's my green. Now I start with my yellow. So I broke it down. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that I lived with my grandparents and I worked a couple jobs and they treated me like the princess I am. No, I'm just teasing. Anybody working 2 jobs is not a princess. Here we go. After I graduated from high school, I lived with my grandparents and worked 2 jobs to save as much money as I could. I thought somebody's at the door. So that one's yellow. So everything that talks about the time I lived with them and I worked at the Tacoma Mall. Whew, I was busy. My feet hurt all the time. So everything about that is going to be pink. I often worked 6 days a week from 5:30 to 11 p.m. 5:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. Keep going. My grandmother woke up early, really early, so I wouldn't have to eat breakfast alone. She always sat down with me, so I had a bowl of cereal. She'd have a cup of coffee. She just didn't want me to be by myself. She packed me a lunch so I'd have something nutritious to eat for lunch, and she always had supper ready for me when I came crawling at 11 p.m. All of that talks about how my grandma treated me like I was really, really important to her. And keep going on. She sat with me at the table and asked me questions about my day, and she told me things that had happened while I was gone. So all of that is about the time I lived with them. And you can see I subtly transition. I start saying when. So those words kind of tell you, this is my second reason, yo. So here we go. When I went away to college, I got a terrible case of the flu. I was super duper sick. Super sick. I was a freshman. It was bad. It was really, really bad. All I wanted was my mommy or my grandma. So let's talk about what happened when I got the flu. The university sent me to the hospital so I could get some fluids, and my grandparents immediately dropped everything to pick me up and take me home. So it's all about that time when they just dropped everything. They literally, Tacoma to Bellingham, it's about 2.5 hours. They were there. My grandma braved Seattle rush hour traffic in my tiny Honda alone, so I wouldn't be without a car. This was something way outside of her comfort level. So I drove a Honda Civic. It was no frills, stick shift. And if you've ever been in stop and go traffic in a stick shift, it's a lot of clutch, gas, action. My poor grandma, she was driving my car, and I was with my granddad in the other car. Sick as a dog. I kept throwing up. It was gross. Went through like 6 plastic bags. Would you like me to tell more? Okay. Anywho, let's go on to the third reason, detail, or fact about how they showed I was important. My grandma showed me I was important. My granddad did too, but I had to pick one. So here we go. She also made me feel significant by watching my favorite television show in high school, China Beach. Oh, I loved that show. It's not even on Netflix that I know of. It's all about Vietnam War, and I guess it's really historically accurate. I'm too young. I was born late, believe it or not. So that's my third yellow. So everything that talks about the TV show is going to be pink. So my granddad had been in the Vietnam War, stationed at China Beach, and it was a difficult period in his life. So it's all pink. I'm going to keep going on. Although he didn't watch the show with me, my grandma did, and she would tell me what it was like for the soldiers when they came home and some of the stories she had known during this time, of people she had known during this time. So all that's pink. My granddad was a full colonel during this time, and it was tough. If you were sent overseas to Vietnam, you weren't necessarily treated like, you didn't get a soldier's welcome. Let's put it that way. People did not say thank you for your service. And so my grandma told me all those kinds of stories. My granddad just would go into another room. My dad was in Vietnam too, and he doesn't talk about it very much. A little bit more than ever before, but they just don't. Because I think war's not cool. I'm super poignant today. Here we go. Let's go on. More pink. It brought us closer, and I always appreciated how she took the time to be with me. She made it a very special occasion. I felt like that show and my grandma's input, I just learned so much about how they managed through it as well. Because it was hard. It was really hard. Anyway, next, purple. In addition, purple. I said it was going to be about when I spoke, my grandma listened to me. So that's going to be green. And I said, my grandma was a good friend. She was a good friend. Very good friend. So now I need to go to my yellows. Before the era of emails and text messages, every week I got a letter. It was so cool. So here we go. Before the era of email and text messages, I look forward to at least one letter from her every week. So everything's going to be about this one letter a week at least. So pink. I usually heard from her several times a week, but I knew no matter what that I would have a letter or card waiting for me in my mailbox. Pink. Keep going. Even when they went on vacation, I received notes or cards on a consistent basis. So I'm still going on with the pink. I went backpacking through Europe after I graduated from college, and I still received notes and letters from her. So still going on about this one letter a week. What a surprise it was to arrive in Berlin, Germany, or Paris, France, and receive a letter from home. So all of that is all about this letter a week. So I really did, when I backpacked through Europe, there were certain cities, when I would call home, I called home about every other week. It was really expensive. And there would be a message of, go to the American Express in Paris or London or wherever I was going, the bigger city that would have one. And there would be, I'd say, may I have my mail? And I always had a letter from my grandparents. Never my parents. I'm just cheating. Never my parents. Anywho, let's go into the next reason, detail, or fact. I also felt like my grandma listened to me when I went through a difficult time with my mom. So I was a stinker about the age of you, and I was very dramatic. I was very emotional. Not super proud. Hopefully you're not like that with your family, because that would be sad. Or if you are, change. Say sorry. Here we go. Everything about me being a stinker. I was a headstrong teenager, and I sometimes felt like my parents didn't listen to me, or they favored my brother. Do you have a sibling? And does it seem like your sibling never gets in trouble? Me too. Me too. Here we go. I remember getting into an argument with my brother over something small and petty, and my parents took his side, or so I thought. My grandma sat me down in the den where it was private, and she asked me to explain. And although she didn't side with anyone, just letting me say my part meant a lot, and I was able to get over it quickly. So all that about how isn't a stinker to my mom is pink. Next, my last yellow for that paragraph will be about just all the time my grandma and I spent time chatting. So here we go. My grandma and I spent hours chatting in the living room, in the kitchen, or in the garden. So all of that is pink. All of it. So that is yellow. That is yellow. That is not pink. Sorry. Everything talking about how we talked is going to be pink. Here we go. I learned about her childhood, living on a farm in Ellensburg, her aunts and uncles growing up with parents who drank too much, moving 36 times during my granddad's 36-year military career, how much she loved living overseas in Germany and especially France, and so many stories about our relatives. I will always cherish the time she spent with me. So all of that is pink. Now we go to that third paragraph. Let's find the purple. Transition. Finally. Now what this paragraph I said would be about knowing all of my family's history. So I say it a little bit differently. I'm going to use green. My grandma taught me so much about our family. Now in this paragraph, I did something kind of revolutionary. I gave you more than 3 yellows. So here, my first yellow is here, is how my grandma tells me about her life, her growing up, what's that called, childhood. She was an only child, and some of her aunts weren't much older than she was. So that's my first yellow there. So now everything that talks about her growing up will be pink. She moved to Tacoma and met an obnoxious red-headed boy who lived next door. Little did she know that later she would marry that man and have one of the most loving marriages I've ever known. So that's about her childhood. And the next reason, detail, or fact is that she described my granddad's side of the family. So here we go. She described my granddad's family and told me stories about my paternal great-grandmother, Great-Grandma Pearl. So that's my second yellow, yo. Because remember, you can have as many yellows. You just always have to have at least 2 pinks. So here we go. Pearl was a fantastic cook. And frequently, so I highlighted that pink. I'm going to keep going on. Frequently cooked in logging camps in and around Port Angeles in the 1920s. So that's all about my granddad's side of the family, my Grandma Pearl. And Grandma Pearl was also the cook at the restaurant Dupuis. So it's like in the 20s. Yeah, I didn't grow up here. I moved here. And so then we're going to keep going on. I add an exclamation. So what interesting lives my family has had. So then I'm going to transition to my next reason, detail, or fact about the artifacts that my grandma has left. So as an only child, my Grandma Witt survived her family, and many artifacts were passed down through her. So, you know, heirlooms and things, you know, as people passed away, she ended up with them. So now everything about heirlooms is going to be pink. She took the time to label everything and write about each object in a journal. And she did the same with photos, labeling each one and making sure everyone was identified, the location indicated, and a date was included. So all that is about these artifacts. And I love looking at old photos with her handwritten notes on the back. So there we go. That's my third reason, detail, or fact. So here's where I get jiggy. I have a fourth one. My grandma also took us to the cemetery. Now, some people were kind of weirded out by this part, but we did it. We did it every Easter, and we do it all the time here too as well. So me and my family, and I drag my mom to Tacoma, and I drag her to the cemetery she likes going to. So anyway, that's my fourth, and now I'm going to elaborate about going to the cemetery. So we would leave flowers for her parents, my grandmother, my granddad's mother, my paternal grandmother. And this was a really important tradition to her, and I hope I'm always able to continue it in her honor. So it's still about going to the cemetery. I'll have to travel a few hours to do it, but I think it'll be well worth the effort to carry on that tradition. And I imagine this would make her happy. So all of that is pink. So I'm running low on time. I'm going to get going here. So then I give you a nice strong transition, as you can clearly see. Now I changed my thesis statement, and I changed it a lot, and it just basically says my grandma rocks. So here we are, green. No, thesis statement is blue. See, I'm trying to hurry and I'm getting nervous. My life has been greatly influenced by my Grandma Witt. So all that is blue. Then I'm going to touch on my reasons and my details and my facts. That's going to be yellow. I was valued because she made me feel important, remember? And I was listened to. And I know my family and our history. So those are my three yellows. They're little sentences there, but you get the point. So remember, a zinger is a strong statement that you have at the end of the sentence. So I say, I hope that you also have someone you can't imagine living without. My grandma has passed, but I will always be able to hear her laughter, remember her words, and feel her love every single day. So, again, I did it. I have two sentences for a zinger, so let's put boxes around it. And this one, I really want these sentences to go together. So, I'm going to put a box around it. I'm going to call it a zinger. I'm going to put an exclamation point. I'd like to see your exclamation point as well. Ooh, ooh. And then, last but not least, we're going to put orange on that. This is what some people forgot to do today. It was so sad. So it looks like this. So my friends, this in the basket. Remember, these essays of mine are meant to kind of guide you through it so you don't feel confused. And you're like, oh, I have a story I could tell about that. Oh, I could do this. So that's why we have them. So I want you to keep them for a little while. And when you're done with your graphic organizer, show it to me so you can put your star in the poster outside. When you're done with your outline, show it to me. Put a star in the poster outside. And then you're going to start to type. And when you think you've finished typing, then you can work on something else. Be sure that you click on that share button and put S. Sanders. It's the GG at PSD. And we figured out later, so period 1, 2, that you need to share it so that I can comment, because you can only pick one. So just share so I can comment, make sure it's correct. And I cannot wait to see what you're writing. Okay, See ya.